So we've got a lot of capacity left, but we have very publicly said we will be very disciplined about how we manage that as and when the fund grows to that sort of scale.
So as you reach, say, 2 billion or something AUM, you start to say, okay, either we need to rethink the whole box or do something else or not accept.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting way. It's an area where the interests of fund managers potentially diverge from the interests of their clients, and so you need very good governance of that. And so we put that in place early, and we've been very public about it and we're very transparent about it. So that should work in our clients' favour.
Okay, my final question to you, George, is that you have said 3 billion, right? If there are funds like you, who all of them said 3 billion, 5 billion, then would it impact on the performance of all of them?
I guess, we have a fairly large and expanding investable market. We talk about that 20% of the market that we're interested in. It's actually more like 17% of the market that we're interested in. But we have an opportunity set that's about 950 companies. When we first started the strategy in the early 2000s, our original investable universe was about 300 or 350 companies. We've constantly made the criteria more difficult, so we are more exacting in our needs just to become an investable company. But the opportunity set is growing, so that helps. But clearly, it depends on how things pan out.
Obviously, I can also see that with near mandatory zero carbon targets and so on, you will have new companies entering this space, providing newer things, so expanding the universe in which we can invest, and the older ones going out. That's fine. So let's open the debate. Azman first.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes, Salman, there's one comment and one question. Apart from the two Takaful companies that you mentioned, quite okay, what is the rating that you give to the rest of the companies? Is it B or something? Or below that or above that? And number two, I want to comment is that in Malaysia last time, I don't know the latest one, although we had a lot of sukuk that the Takaful companies can buy, but what happened is they are being gobbled up by the bigger non-Islamic financial institutions. They are buying, so the Islamic financial institutions and Takaful companies are not able to buy them because of, you have more financial strength, and we are not in England or Europe. We are in Malaysia and the Middle East where money matters, and the fund managers will look at the clients with the bigger financial muscle. What is your comment?
Okay, so the first question, what ratings do we assign companies? We have a methodology that we use to assign those ratings, and that looks at the company's balance sheet, operating performance, business profile, ERM. So those companies that display better metrics across all of those, they end up with the higher ratings. Companies, and this includes Takaful, mutuals, everything. Companies that don't display good metrics will end up at the lower level. As far as our Takaful ratings are concerned specifically, there is a wide range. It goes all the way from A- that are doing really well, that have good strong balance sheets, lots of capital and surpluses, all the way down to BB+ or double Bs actually. So there's a really wide range. Those companies that don't display good metrics on the balance sheet will not get the better ratings, and that does include capital, it includes assets, it includes fungibility of those assets. Your second question is the fact that the large non-Sharia financial institutions gobble up whatever sukuk is being issued. It's a concern. Yeah, it's true. There's not much I can comment further on that. It is an issue for Takaful companies that the fact that whatever is being issued they cannot get their hands on, but they need to be more active with their asset managers and speak more, proactively with them to see what they can get. But yeah, it is an issue. I can't speak any more on that.
Does it mean the secondary market in these sukuks is not as active?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't looked at the activity there.
Because without that, those smaller players cannot easily enter. Okay, Scott.
I've got a couple of questions. George, one of the things that I was interested in is your transition graph where you've got the non-investable and the transition stocks. What's your thoughts on the sort of those transitional stocks within the communities that are maybe focused on that? I know there's some work getting done by the LSE on transition towns and things, and how to sort of replace, you know, things like in the north of England who've been focused on fossil fuels and things like that. How do you see those economies and local areas surviving if the move is to you know, the mainstream moves more to the sustainable way of investing? And Shiraaz, the other I was wanting to ask was, what's the appetite in the Sharia compliance sector on sort of, obviously you're active managed compared to passive managed, and what's the toleration on charges for that additional cost that you know that is associated with that?
To answer your question, first question, Scott, there's a significant issue. I mean, what you're talking about is slightly different to what I had on the slide, in a sense. We're talking about industries that are in transition in terms of how they produce, sort of source and manufacture and deliver their product. But I think what you're talking about is the impact on regional economies, where you have industries that maybe fall away and new industries spring up. And that's going. I mean, there is a big issue. This industrial transition that we face, that we're starting to see very live around us, will create significant challenges for large sections of the population in areas where that transition bites. So, you know, we're just seeing what's happening to British Steel at the moment. There'll be huge impacts on employment in significant parts of the country. We're seeing what's happened to politics in the US as a result of the politicization of this transition, if you like, with, you know, the decline of coal industry in the US. And what that has led to in terms of you know, where we see the current US administration. So there are significant political and social ramifications of this transition. Not all of that is within our gift to either even to influence or control, as financial institutions. But I think from where we look at the sort of the spectrum of areas that we can invest in, it means that as you see, particularly in environmental transition, then some of the social themes are particularly becoming incredibly important. So education is one that I particularly light on. You know, we need to equip people, and we need to equip regions and communities with the skills for the new economy, and re-equip people who will who have built their careers or built their experience in the old economy to be able to be relevant and employed and lead good lives in the new economy as well. But it's a massive issue to manage.
So we've spoken to a wide range of people, obviously across retail, institutional, investment or investors, and I would say in general that the conversations around fees have been no different than we would on the global high quality fund than with the Sharia compliant investing, because ultimately people's issue is with paying high fees and then not getting any outperformance. So we fortunately have been able to exhibit that, so the conversations are no different between Sharia compliant investors and our investors in the current fund.
Sorry, yes. I'll come back to you, Ian. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My first question is from Salman, and the second from George. In any mixed portfolio of management, property minimum is 20%, 15% in any mixed asset. In Malaysia, why they have just investment 1% in Takaful insurance company and 55% in Sekus? Is indirectly Sekus again investment in the property? Why it is 1%? The rate of return in property is low in Malaysia, that they are not interested to investment in property?
I would disagree with the view that property should be at a minimum of 15-20%. If you look at insurance companies across the world, they don't invest in real estate or physical infrastructure that heavily. They do nowadays because of return, but they're still about 5% of the total asset allocation. In the Middle East, it's high. Malaysia is actually more in line with the rest of the world. the Middle East is out of line with the rest of the world. It's not about returns, right? The primary purpose of the asset allocation is not the return that you get on it. It is to service policyholders first and foremost, right? And the real estate is not a very good servicing asset because it's not liquid. And Malaysians are, I would say, are slightly more sophisticated in their approach to asset management and are holding highly liquid, more high-quality assets than their Middle Eastern counterparts. The Middle Eastern counterparts have a fixation on real estate, which is part of the culture of the Middle East, but is not in line with the rest of the world as far as asset allocations are concerned.
Mr. Joe, you know that as you showed the slide of the Guardian about the lake, the slide of the Guardian.
From the Guardian, the slide you showed of the ice melt.
Ice
oh, right, yes.
Ice melt, yes.
Greenland.
So from risk management of view, what kind of the investment your company is thinking to do for reducing the negative effect of the climate in future?
So a number of our environmental themes are focused on that space. Yes, that's the slide. They're either investing in renewable energy production, so wind, waste to energy, solar, and the like, or actually a significant part of our investable opportunity is around resource efficiency. So we waste an enormous amount of energy, we waste an enormous amount of material, of other resources, and so there's actually quite a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of products and services which are able to reduce the amount of energy used in a particular process for the same outcome, and therefore that directly leads to lower carbon emissions. And what we need to do as an economy is to decouple economic growth from resource consumption and decouple economic growth from carbon emissions and carbon production. And so greater efficiency and as well as different sources of energy, are the kind of investments that help to lead to that kind of outcome.
Thank you. Yes.
Great, thank you. So my question is really towards Maaqil, but also to an extent everyone. So a common criticism with ESG and also impact investing comes down to the lack of conformity when it comes to the ratings agencies. So for example, I think Tesla is rated number 1 by FTSE amongst auto manufacturers and bottom by MSCI. So what steps do any of you take to, I guess, address that and to prevent picking and choosing ratings specifically? And I don't know, where do you see the industry going?
Yeah, I think there's always a concern there. I think because it's all started from a different place and a different position, and we've got different ways of rating those companies. So our model is, the FTSE for Good model has been established since 2001 now. We try to manage all those ratings internally, and we've published how we reach those scores. So we're trying to be as transparent as we can. There are some discrepancies between who you follow. Sustainalytics, for example, is a good firm who do this type of work as well, and we're also working quite closely with them. So I think we're looking at different providers, and we're also trying to be the leader in that space, and we have a very strong ESG team, and George knows our team very, very well on the ESG team. We're trying to work with the market to make it a little bit more standardized, because there is that concern. You've got different index providers with different scoring mechanisms, but we are working with the whole market to try to make it a little bit more transparent.
And there are a number of initiatives as well underway. We've got to remember this is an industry that really is at the early days, in a way, of its adoption, of it becoming sort of adopted by a mass market, if you like. So we're seeing there's a growth in the services provided by the likes of FTSE, MSCI, Sustainalytics. There's a number of services providers, but in a way, like many things, it takes different types to make a market. So we need to celebrate diversity of approach as well as find a common way to assess. But your example of Tesla is a very good one when you're thinking about what does this sustainability question mean. There's no doubt that Tesla's product, electric cars and the Powerwall and a lot of the things that Tesla are doing with their product have enormous potential to benefit from a sustainability perspective, to move us away from internal combustion engine cars to a much more sustainable sort of approach. That's fantastic. The potential impact from Tesla is wonderful. But if you look at Tesla, so that's the what, if you like. If you look at Tesla from the how it runs its operations, the evidence of good governance, of management quality, of operational quality, of manufacturing quality, there are significant questions to be asked. And on that sort of basis, on the how, they tend to score very badly. On the what, they tend to score very well. Now, it's difficult to explain to the average person, what does that mean in the concept of sustainability? Both are relevant questions, and different investors come at that question from different starting points, and that is why you're going to have a diversity of opinion. But there are just a couple of things. You mentioned transparency, and I think that is really critical in this space. You have to be absolutely transparent and also have good governance. So we have an independent investment advisory committee which comes in and challenges us directly on every holding in the portfolio and how that fits the philosophy and the definition that we've set out to clients. So we have that independent challenge on us that all of our holdings are consistent with that. And we go a step further than that in that we publish the minutes of that meeting. So that independent challenge happens in a public forum. That's almost unheard of, to have that kind of transparency. But it means that our portfolio is incredibly consistent with what people are looking for. There are outside influences as well. So there is this incoming sort of regulation. Regulation can have, can be a double-edged sword. It can be beneficial. It can send us in the wrong direction as well. But so there's an incoming. There's a European directive coming in, a European Sustainable Finance Directive that's coming in with and they're developing what they're calling a taxonomy to apply to green investment funds, which will start to define this in much more concrete detail, which will provide standards. Whether that actually gives us the outcomes that we want is a bit of an open question at the moment, but there is a lot of initiatives in that direction.
Okay, thank you. Can I have the last question from Ian, please?
Hi. My name is Ian. I'm managing partner of Ecofolio. There's been a lot of discussion really about technology and resource use. I'm just wondering if the panel has any thoughts on the opportunities behind investing in nature and natural assets, or in concepts like circular economy and bringing things back into the value chain.
Yes, is the answer. There are significant investment opportunities across that whole spectrum. Not all of them will exist in listed equities, though, or listed markets. So, no, we in our purview, it doesn't. There's a lot of natural capital assets that present very good investment opportunities, but in a different structure to the ones that affect our kind of portfolio. Circular economy is a really fascinating topic, and it's starting to influence more and more of the industrial complex. We live in a linear economy. We dig stuff up out of the ground, we make things, we use them, and then typically we end up throwing them away. And we need to fundamentally change that across all sorts of product activities in order to develop a more sustainable world. So you have, and this is changing fundamentally the nature of many businesses and leads to this concept of winners and losers. So Schiphol Airport now doesn't buy light bulbs, it buys lumens. So it doesn't buy light bulbs, it doesn't buy more and more light bulbs, it buys light as a product. And so what was a product becomes a service, and that fundamentally changes all the incentives down that value chain and where value is created. We invest in Smurfit Kappa, which is a cardboard box manufacturer. And it's gone from being a commodity supplier of cardboard boxes to a much higher value-added service supplier in the circular economy that's recycling material and providing services in terms of transport and logistics. And that has fundamentally changed the shape of the investment proposition of that business and the returns it's able to generate and the stability of returns. And so, yes, it's a critical dynamic that's changing the face of many industries, and investors need to understand that in order to be able to position their investments correctly.
Thank you very much. I think we deserve a coffee break, but thank you very much for an excellent panel contribution. And you can break for coffee, come back in half an hour, please, for a fascinating session with the World Bank on some of these issues on a larger scale. Thank you very much.